Oh, no, you don't. I'm the fella does the clobbering around here. The Thing! In person, Buster.
Your only weapon is brute strength, Thing. Let us see how you fare against my greater strength.
How come villains always making cornball speeches when they throw a punch?
Paul Frees also voices the Fantastic Four's alien friend, Uatu the Watcher.
Galactus is not evil. He is above good or evil. Oh, boy. Just what we need. Philosophy. How about giving us some help? Talk cheap, Watcher. Patience, Ben Grimm. I am not idle.
Across less than 20 episodes, the series manages to show off a dozen different villains from the Fantastic Four's Rogues Gallery, ranging from famous foes like the Mole Man, Galactus, and of course Doctor Doom, to more obscure villains like Diablo, Rama-Tut, the Red Ghost, and his super apes.
I hope this stun ray gun will hold him off if he attacks. What is happening to this gun? It is changing its form. It is turning into a ape. The cosmic rays have given him the powers to change his shape.
If I hadn't have read the comics featuring these characters, I would have been ready to call shenanigans and accuse Hanna-Barbera of making them up, but nope. They made all the villains basically as Stan and Jack intended. The only time they made up any characters was when they had to for legal reasons. They were not allowed to adapt any stories with Namor the Sub-Mariner because the rights were held by the studio Gantry Lawrence Animation, who were having him star in the Marvel superheroes. Although many people associate him with the Fantastic Four, as he often guest starred in the series and had a relationship with the Invisible Girl back when she was Susan Storm, and it got to the point where they dedicated an issue of What If showing her marrying Namor instead of Reed. The Sub-Mariner predates the Fantastic Four by a little over 2 decades, and as such his appearance in issue 4 was a big return for the character. Because of that, his rights don't automatically come with the Fantastic Four, so you'd think that Hanna-Barbera would just forget about adapting any stories that featured him, but despite that, they adapted 2 different stories and simply made up other characters to act out his roles. For Danger in the Depths, they basically made a cheap copy of Namor called Triton, apparently unaware that in the comics there was an Inhuman named Triton. Interestingly, comic-accurate versions of Namor's girlfriend, Lady Dorma, and one of his enemies, Atuma, show up having the same relationships with Triton that they have with Namor. In another episode, Demon in the Deep, Hanna-Barbera created an original villain to take Sub-Mariner's role. A criminal scientist named Dr. Gamma mutated into a monster that looks like a sea monkey version of Thanos. Despite the weird design, I really liked this episode as he felt like a character the team could have encountered in the comic. Right down to the way he narrated his power sounding just like it came from a 60s comic.
I'm able to exist beneath the water without air, but I've turned into some sort of sea monster. I can shoot forth power like a stingray.
That is one of my favorite things about the series. The writing is very evocative of the comics. I mean, of course it is. These stories were less than a decade old at this point in time. But it's still interesting seeing Hanna-Barbera attempt to be as faithful to the source material as they possibly could be for once. Right down to having lines straight from the comics, even if the context is a little different.
Something awful is happening to me. I can't stand it.
Look! His clothes are bursting. What is he turning into?
I've turned into some kind of thing.
Of course, because this was a 60s show, sometimes the stories were simplified, but usually nothing major was lost. For example, in the episode Prisoners of Planet X, the alien dictator Kurgo simply kidnaps the Fantastic Four, but in the comic that inspired this episode, he used a device to make everybody else in the world hate them so that when his robot came to take them away from Earth, it would seem like an offer they couldn't refuse. I don't mind this change, as seeing the ordinary citizens turn against heroes is one of my least favorite cliches. Although this instance is one of the most tolerable ones, as the people were literally forced to act this way and weren't just giving way to their baser natures like that town full of ungrateful jerks in the Mega Ranger finale, which is still the worst ending to any Super Sentai series I have ever seen. Occasionally there were weird changes, like the end of the episode where they fought Super Skrull, a shape-shifting alien soldier enhanced to have all the powers of the Fantastic Four. Instead of sealing him in a volcano like in the original comic, he surrenders and they lock him inside the form of a cow. This doesn't come completely out of left field. That was the fate for 3 of the first Skrulls they fought in an earlier issue. This means that the adaptation of Super Skrull's first appearance in Season 1 of the 90s show is technically a more faithful version, but seeing as how it features such odd moments as Mr. Fantastic disguising himself as a tree like he was DC's Plastic Man, and Ben Grimm rapping, it sure as heck is not the better rendition of the story.
Don't watch, precious, don't you dare. It will rot your brain.
Overall, there were only 2 episodes I didn't like. The aforementioned Danger in the Depths was pretty uninteresting despite some exciting action sequences, but my least favorite was Return of the Mole Man, which was easily the most boring episode of the entire series. This just felt like a very paint-by-the-numbers story with the Mole Man, which is unfortunate because he was always one of my favorite Fantastic Four villains. Did you know that he was literally the first supervillain the team ever fought all the way back in issue 1? Dr. Doom didn't appear until the 5th issue. Pretty much the only things I liked about this episode were the crystal walls and one cool moment where Sue used her force field to protect the team as they ran. When it comes to favorites, it was honestly kind of difficult, as the episodes were generally consistent with their quality. Even Behold a Distant Star, an episode I was not looking forward to, as the second season of the 90s series adapted all the dark elements from the original comic version of the story in ways that they could never show in a Saturday morning in the 60s, ended up being in the better half of the series for me. It even includes some elements from the story not seen in the 90s version. It just goes to show that even when one adaptation is significantly better than another, both can be great in their own right.
It is too bad that the subspace separates our planets, for the Skrulls could become good friends with Earthmen.
I am sure of it. Goodbye, Your Majesty.
But ultimately, I was able to narrow down what my top 6 favorite episodes were. Before I talk about them, I just want to say that I won't be mentioning the episodes' numbers because the exact order is kind of confusing. Going by air dates, it started on Yancey Street as the 7th episode, but the Fantastic Four have already met the Watcher, which doesn't happen until episode 14, Galactus, so the episodes were aired out of order. It's not a major thing, as most of the episodes were designed to be watched in a vacuum, but as somebody who does like to look over a show's chronology, it can be kind of frustrating. Anyways, moving on with number 6, The Way It All Began. Police Commissioner Robin warns the Fantastic Four that Dr. Doom is in America plotting to destroy Reed Richards. Reed then flashes back to his college days when he first met Victor Von Doom as well as Ben Grimm and the events that led up to them, as well as Susan and Johnny becoming the Fantastic Four. One thing that any episode guide agrees on for this show is that this is shockingly not the first episode. We'll cover that one next. But this was the first episode I watched, and I think it's a great introduction to the show. Even for somebody very familiar with the characters and their origin stories, it was a real treat to see them animated in a show that didn't wait until the 2nd season to take itself seriously.
What's this? What are you doing in my room, Richards? Give me those papers.
I just came by to say hello. But you'd better recheck those equations. You're off a few decimals. And That means big trouble if you use this material.
I'll have to go ahead with my experiment right now.
Doctor Doom is one of my all-time favorite Marvel villains. Top 3 at least, and his origin is one of my all-time favorite supervillain origin stories. There's just something so interesting about a villain who, for all his magnificent arrogance, is really his own worst enemy, but blames his failures on others.
What have I done to myself? My face is hideous! This is all Reed Richards' fault. He made me hurry my experiment. Now I must hide my face from all mankind, but he will pay.
We also get a condensed version of the rest of his story, but for what it's worth, it's still pretty cool to see. There's a lot left out, like how he loves his dearly departed mother, and that the reason he built the machine was to try and contact her from beyond the grave, but I can see why Hanna-Barbera thought that would be too dark. The main draw of this episode is the Fantastic Four's origin, and it's a very well done version of it. Interestingly, this episode is dated as it mentions both Reed and Ben serving in World War II. This is something that happened in the comics as well, and as such, after enough time, any wars the characters were in have to be updated except for Captain America. This is still my favorite depiction of the team's origin.
I'll never forget that day. The adventures we had and the ones we will have.
Besides the origin, we get scenes of them going about their everyday lives, with Ben watching a building get demolished and Johnny Storm racing, which is a hobby of his from the comics. The episode concludes with a brief but still exciting battle against Doctor Doom. The only bad thing I can say about this episode is one of my biggest nitpicks with the series. The mouth on Doctor Doom's mask moves when it's supposed to be just that, a mask. His eyes are also more expressive than they should be, and to be quite frank, it makes him look kind of goofy. It's especially strange because you'd think a studio like Hanna-Barbera would jump at the opportunity to save a few bucks by not animating his mouth, but maybe the point was to make him look less intimidating so as not to scare the kids. Still, it's more forgivable here than when they do it in series made decades later. That doesn't damage the episode in any way, as it's still a great episode whether you watch it first or not. Besides, it's nice that we didn't have to wait to see the origin until Season 2 like with the 60s Spider-Man series. Number 5. Menace of the Mole Men. When other tenants of the Baxter Building complain about the noise from Reed's experiments, he decides to buy an island for sale that he found in a pamphlet he got in the mail so he can perform them in peace, but it's really a trap by the Mole Man, who intends on destroying them and sinking some of Earth's largest cities into his subterranean kingdom. This was the first episode aired, and it was actually a great way to kick off the series, capturing pretty much all of its strengths. Every member gets a chance to show off their powers, including some creative ways like Johnny using his flames to light a dark cave for them, or Sue putting a force field around the trigger button for Mole Man's doomsday device so he can't press it. I even think that the opening with them at the Baxter Building testing out Sue's force field is the perfect way to start this episode.
Sue, do you think you're able to withstand a 5-ton collision? I'd like to complete these tests.
I'm not tired, Reed. Give it all you've got, Ben.
Oh, this is kid stuff. Step aside, Susie gal. Ow!
You withstood the equivalent of a 10-ton blockbuster.
I feel like I'm the one with the busted block.
It makes sense that this series would start with focusing on Susan's ability to project a force field, as that power wasn't even 4 years old at this point. But a lot of adaptations tend to start out with her already having that ability, which I think is a very good idea, as it makes her a more useful team member from the get-go. Part of the reason this opening works so well for me is that I really like the build-up to their encounter with the Mole Man. It's nothing groundbreaking, but sometimes with first episodes it feels like the writers just want to jump into the conflict or start with action, so I always appreciate it when something decides to take its time in the right way. And when they get to the Mole Man, that's when it becomes exciting. He traps them all in rooms especially designed for them, but each of them manages to escape their own trap except for Johnny, who has to be saved by Ben.
I might have known I'd find you lying down on the job. Hey,
Kid, you're really hurt.
I was never so glad to see that big, ugly face of yours. Thanks, Ben.
Can you get that fire of yours going? Because something tells me we're gonna be needing it.